Type 2 diabetes. It's your fault. Probably. Quick disclaimer. I'm Seamus. I'm not a doctor. I'm sure you probably can tell that just by looking at me, but not a doctor, not a dietitian, not a nutritionalist. In fact, I'm not trained in anything except for my very own diabetes. So this is all about research that I've done for my diabetes, which, by the way, went from 11.1 A1C to 5.1 in 6 months, right? It was not fun, but I did it. Any advice you get on this podcast or any other podcasts, don't do anything without first consulting your medical team. All right. Be safe, have fun, do your research, get educated. The title of this podcast, It's Your Fault, probably. And that's a really, really good thing. Why is it a good thing? Because things that are your fault are fixable, right? Things that are your fault are more likely come from choices that you have made, right? You choose to drink and drive. How do you fix drinking and driving? You choose not to drink and drive, right? You choose to cheat on someone, right? How do you fix that? You choose not to cheat on someone. So more than likely, the reason you have type 2 diabetes, and I'm assuming that you do, or you're pre-diabetic, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this podcast, but is more than likely because of choices that you've made. And the good news is that you can quit making those choices and then be a much better diabetic. I chose to quit doing and eating a lot of different things, but we'll get to that. But that's why it's called It's Your Fault, and it's a good thing, right? Number one cause of type 2 diabetes is obesity, right? Being overweight. Obesity, being overweight leads to insulin resistance. As you start doing your research on type 2 diabetes, you're going to run into that term quite a bit. Insulin resistance is your body's inability to process insulin and blood sugar, right? So your body can't use the insulin that it has. You have all this blood sugar. So the blood sugar is just floating around and causing diabetes and complications that come from diabetes, like the fun ones, right? Heart disease, blindness, dementia, cancer. Yeah. Insulin resistance is getting linked to a whole bunch of different diseases. There's a graph out there. I don't remember where I found it in one of the books that I read anyway, but it had insulin resistance in the middle and that had all these diseases that you don't want around it and all these links to the fact that insulin resistance is causing those things or is linked to those anyway. Other factors include for type 2 diabetics, of course, genetics. If you have a bunch of type 2 diabetes in your family, be aware because your family and genetics and everything it doesn't do well with it. And if you're going to be overweight and not exercise and eat the wrong things, the chances of you getting type 2 diabetes is much, much higher. Lack of physical activity in general, right? If you've ever been overweight, like I have, right? So you don't get up in the morning and go, yeah, I'm going to go knock out a 10 miler, right? You're happy if you can go for a walk on the weekend and not feel too tired. So in general, and not everyone, but in general, overweight people, well, they don't exercise. Age, as you get older, your body is less efficient. I know it's shocking. I didn't just make that up. Everyone knows that. As you get older, things just don't work quite as good as they used to. For the phrase, the hangovers hurt more than they used to. That's because your body doesn't recover as fast. So as you age, it has a harder time making up for your bad habits, right? You can offset quite a few bad habits by being young. And I got young kidneys and young pancreas and everything's working. But yeah, as you get older, doesn't work as much. Ethnicity. Certain ethnicities like African American, Hispanic, Native Americans, they have a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Genetics, again. Studies are showing that 40% of young American adults, that's 18 to 44, have insulin resistance. 40%. What does that mean? We got a whole bunch more diabetics on the way because if you are insulin resistant, over time, you're going to end up being pre-diabetic. And then if you don't do anything about it, you're going to jump to the type 2 diabetes. This has nothing to do with type 1 diabetics, which is literally an autoimmune disease. That is a serious stuff. So type 1 diabetics, I almost like to categorize them completely separate, right? Type 1s, oh my gosh, you guys got to do your thing, right? You didn't do anything. As type 2 diabetics, we're like, yeah, we caused it on ourselves. It's probably our fault. Now, for me, it was kind of weird because I didn't check all the boxes, right? When I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, July 31st, 2023, I was 6'3" at the time and 200 pounds. Now, I had been much heavier. I had just lost 20 pounds in 6 months for no reason. Not a good sign, by the way. That's because my type 2 diabetes was flaring. It was out of control. And so I was ended up losing weight because of it. But I spent quite a few years at around 230 to 235. I like to call it my beer and butter stage. Why? Because I chose to drink a lot of beer and I chose to eat a lot of butter. I had a food addiction. I still do to this day. In fact, even through this great journey that I've been on the last 18 months, where I've gotten off all my meds for diabetes and all that kind of stuff, and I've done really good. I still have food addiction pop up. I've had issues with nuts, and I've had issues with peanut butter, and I've had issues with fake foods, and it's still there, unfortunately. So I just try to handle it the best I can. What were my go-tos back in the day? Chips, baby, candy, Little Debbie's. Little Debbie and I broke up. Little Debbie and I haven't dated for quite a while now. And cheese, my friend Cheese, who I just love so much, and haven't had a real healthy serving of cheese in quite a while. I didn't do pop. I did diet soda. As soon as I met my wife, I used to do pop. Like when I met my wife when I was 21 years old, but I was a regular full blown Mountain Dew guy forever. And then my wife, all she bought was Diet Coke. So I started drinking Diet Pop and kind of went from there. But I didn't check all the boxes. So it was kind of weird. A lot of people were really surprised. They were shocked. I told them I had type 2 diabetes. They look at me, 6'3", 200 pounds, former runner, had run, marathons and half marathons, and was a vegetarian. And they're like, how could this possibly be? Well, I didn't check all the boxes, but I did make a lot of choices over the years that really messed up my metabolism, and it ended up manifesting in type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance, most important part. How about some foods that cause insulin resistance? These are not going to surprise anyone who's done any sort of research. Sugary drinks. Yep. It's just straight right to your blood sugar, right? Refined carbohydrates. Those are bad carbs. White bread. Nope. White rice. It's not as bad as some. At least it's a real food. Pasta. Most of it's not good. Sugary cereals. Holy cow. It's just straight sugar, right? Processed foods, fast food, frozen meals, not real food, right? If it doesn't expire on you, if you have any food that you're like, hey, this stuff is good in a can, it's processed, it's not real food, it causes insulin resistance. And fatty foods, fried foods, chips, butter, trans fat, check. Those types of things cause insulin resistance. And why do they cause it, right? Well, rapid sugar spikes. So when you take a big bowl of cereal, and we've all done this, by the way, you've done the repour, liar. So you have a bowl of cereal and then you got a bunch of milk left. So you put it back in there because you're like, well, I don't want to waste this milk. I don't want to just drink it. No, I want to anyway. When you have these, it triggers the pancreas when you get a big sugar spike, and the pancreas is amazing. And every type 2 diabetic should be apologizing to their pancreas because we're sorry. I'm sorry. But it triggers the pancreas, and the pancreas is going to kick out this insulin, right? And this insulin's awesome. This insulin goes through the bloodstream and takes all this blood sugar and goes to your cells and be like, cell, I have a whole bunch of blood sugar I need to place somewhere. Are you cool? Can I put this in here? Awesome. That's what the pancreas does. But the problem is when you're insulin resistant or you're obese and your cells will not accept the blood sugar, now the blood sugar is just floating around. It has nothing else to do. And the insulin is like, I tried. There's nothing else I can do. So we're just going to have high blood sugar readings, and that's going to lead to insulin resistance. And of course, lots of different diseases like kidney diseases and all those kind of fun things. The food also, of course, causes weight gain, which also causes insulin resistance. So it's just a perpetual issue, right? you are getting more overweight. That means there's more fat cells in there. Your body will turn sugar into fat, right? If it can't burn it, it turns it into fat. That's going to go in your cells. That's going to be, anyway, we'll do more on insulin resistance at some point, but that's really a big deal. Insulin resistance is a problem. Diabetes is kind of the effect of it, especially in my case. Studies are showing around 90% of type 2 diabetics are overweight or obese. That's almost everyone, right? I'm kind of a weirdo. I wasn't overweight, I wasn't obese, but I still got type 2 diabetes. But most type 2 diabetics, 90% of them, are overweight or obese. And it's our fault. Just own it. As soon as you own it, you're on the way to fixing it. The main cause of obesity is an imbalance in calories versus calories out, right? What are you eating? What are you doing? When you eat lots of food, but you don't do anything about it, you don't work out, you're going to end up being overweight, and you're going to make your insulin resistance worse, and you're going to end up with type 2 diabetes. So I ask people when they ask me about, they tell me they got type 2 diabetes. I said, cool, 2 questions. What are you doing? Like, what does that mean? I go, what are you doing? What are you eating? What are you eating? And what are you doing? What are you eating? Well, I had this, and this. What are you really eating? Oh, I also had this, and this. What are you doing? What are you exercising? Are you moving? Are you walking for, 20 minutes after every single meal? Are you doing these things? If not, this is how we get it going. So the great thing, though, about things being your fault is that they are a result of your choices, like we talked about. You choose to not work out. You choose to eat bad foods. You choose to start working out, and you choose to start eating good foods, and you'll get different results. I love when things are my fault, right? If it isn't my fault, those are the most frustrating things in the world. Take yourself to business, right? And you're at the job, and your boss comes down and says, hey, by the way, we're doing things this way from now on. Oh, I didn't choose to change the way that I do my job. Someone else chose it for me, right? All right. Flip it around and have your boss go to you saying, okay, this isn't working. I want you to come up with a plan for doing your job that is more efficient and better for you. You get to choose what that plan is. You're going to have a lot better result, right? That's how it works. But the question is, are you ready to choose differently? There's lots of information out there. It's really easy to find. But my goal was to get off all meds for diabetes in 12 months. I chose that as my goal, and I made choices in those 12 months that led me to August 13th, right? So I got diagnosed on July 31st, 2023. On August 13th, 2024 was when I get to go into my doctor and said, we're done. I don't need this prescription. I don't need the metformin. I don't need the Jardiance. I've made all these choices over the last 12 months that have led us to your decision, our decision as a team right now, though, to be done with them completely. Are you ready to start making different choices? Because you can. You made the same choices you made to get you here are the opposite choice. Make that, and you can get yourself out of it. It's not easy. It's not quick, but you can do it. So what are you eating and what are you doing? Food, exercise. I know I'm simplifying it really, but that's kind of what it comes down to. It's your fault, probably, but that's a good thing.